Hey everybody, welcome to my backyard. Today we're going to be smoking a whole beef tenderloin on our PIT BOSS Pellet grill. We'll show you how we trim and tie for even cooking, season and smoke the meat for maximum flavor, and finally how we sear it at the end for a beautiful crust on the outside and a perfect medium rare on the inside. When picking out a beef tenderloin, you'll see them labeled either choice or prime. Prime is the best and will have the most intramuscular fat, however, it will be more expensive. A beef tenderloin is a very lean piece of meat to begin with, so the tenderness really comes from cooking the meat to the proper temperature, not from having a lot of rendered fat. So for this reason, I don't usually spend too much time looking for prime beef tenderloin when I know that choice will be just as delicious when cooked properly. I also like to find a beef tenderloin that's already completely trimmed to the extra fat and connective tissue around the meat that's sometimes included. This is called the chain. You can find some other great videos on how to trim the chain if your beef tenderloin has one. However, when I'm paying beef tenderloin prices, I don't like to pay for extra weight that I'm going to be trimming off anyway. When you take the beef tenderloin out of the package, you'll see one thicker end known as the head and a thinner end known as the tail. If you bought a well-trimmed beef tenderloin, the only extra trimming you may need to do is taking off some of the silver skin. The silver skin won't really cook or render away, and it can be chewy and unappetizing if there's a lot of it. So use a good sharp boning or fillet knife to carefully take it off. Next, you'll want to tuck the tail and the head underneath in order to get a nice consistent diameter from one end to the other for even cooking. Many times I find I'm just putting it back the way it was folded in the package to begin with. We're going to smoke our beef tenderloin on a wire rack baking sheet combo to help protect the bottom from the direct heat of the PIT BOSS, but also still get plenty of smoke and airflow on all sides of the roast. Lay about 5 or 6 strings of butcher twine out on the wire rack and place the beef tenderloin on top of them. Then tie each string around to hold the tucked head and tail sections in place and also help it hold a nice round cylindrical shape and presentation. Cut off any excess string once you've tied them and add additional ties as necessary in any bulging areas. You can use a barbecue rub or any type of seasoning you like for beef, but today we're going to be using a little bit of Worcestershire sauce as a binder and then seasoning it with some simple kosher salt and fresh black pepper. If you're going to be searing your beef tenderloin at the end like we are, avoid any seasonings or rubs with a lot of sugar in them, as that sugar will quickly burn over that high direct heat. Once the beef is ready, start up your PIT BOSS, let it run through the startup cycle, and set the temperature to 250 degrees Fahrenheit. Today we're going to be using some of these almond Cabernet pellets from Knottywood because we really like the flavor with beef. We're also going to be setting up a small firebox with some cherry wood chunks for extra smoke flavor. We made a video showing you step by step how to do this. I'll put a link to it down in the description below. So we've got our smoke box on the left side, keeping it far enough away from the temperature probe that it doesn't affect our temperature reading, but the smoke will travel over the beef tenderloin on the way out the exhaust chimney. Kept the beef tenderloin right on the wire rack so it's easy to move around and rotate when we need to, and we'll still get airflow underneath it. I'm going to put a temperature probe in now. We've got our meter, wireless probe thermometer. I'm going to come, it's going to be hard to get right into the center. The way meter tells you to do it is to put it from one end or the other. So we're just going to come from the thicker end to start. I'm going to come as close to the center as I can here, straight in. Probably measuring right about there, but that's fine. We'll spot check later with instant read as we get closer. We're going to set up our cook. I'm going to pick beef tenderloin here. So meter recommends 135. We're going for medium rare, so we want to be kind of finishing right between 130 and 135. But we'll talk about that later as we get closer to finishing up. So for now, we're just going to hit start cook, and it's going to monitor our internal temperature here, and we're going to let this run for a little while. So our PIT BOSS is running at 250 degrees right now. The goal at this point is just to let it slowly come up in temperature and try to absorb as much smoke flavor as possible before we sear it. If you watched our video on how to fix your PIT BOSS temperature issues, you know that we use a flame tamer over the fire pot in the center. I went ahead and took it out knowing that we're going to sear later on. So if you have one of these, make sure to take it out as well before you start cooking so that when it's time to sear, this isn't going to be blocking the flames. And if you haven't watched that video, make sure to check it out. I'll put a link to it up above as well as down in the description below. While the beef tenderloin is smoking, we're going to make a horseradish cream sauce to serve with it. In a large bowl, combine 1.5 cups of mayonnaise, 1/3 cup of sour cream, a tablespoon of prepared horseradish, 1.5 tablespoons of stone ground mustard, 3 tablespoons of Dijon mustard, and 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt. Stir everything well to combine. Make sure to taste test it and add additional horseradish if you want more. For some extra acidity, we also like to add about 2 teaspoons of apple cider vinegar. I'll put a link to this recipe down in the description below. Cover the bowl and place it in the refrigerator until the beef tenderloin is ready to serve. Beef tenderloin's been on just shy of an hour. Our probe is reading 92 degrees. can see we're getting a nice color on it here, even just after an hour. We're gonna go ahead and spot check some other areas. Like I said, the probe only goes in about to the end here, so we wanna see what the middle's doing. Yeah, about the same, maybe a little shy of what the probe's reading. Meter's reading 93 there. Our instant thermometer, this is why you wanna have, make sure you have both on a big piece of meat like this. You can check multiple areas. 89 there, this end, down by the head, we're getting closer to 85, 86. So we're gonna start basting some garlic butter on here. All we did is we took a stick of butter and melted it, and we used some the squeeze tube garlic paste. It's real convenient and easy to use. So we're gonna go ahead and ladle a little bit of this on top, just to get a little extra moisture as we're smoking. We're gonna take our basting brush, kind of even it out a little bit. Okay, and we want to keep a real close eye on our temperature here for the next few minutes and really kind of watch it so we're ready to take it off when it gets to 110 degrees. Today we'll be using a set of grill grates over the direct heat of the fire pot when we sear the beef tenderloin. So as we get closer to this stage, I'm going to swap out a couple of the cast iron grates for these grill grates to get them to start preheating. This will save us some time when it's time to sear. We're at exactly 90 minutes since we first put the beef tenderloin on. The meter's reading about 109 degrees. We're going to go ahead and spot check it here with our instant read thermometer. A little lower, it's a little thicker in that spot. That's fine, 104, and then down by the other end, yeah, also about 110. So we're gonna go ahead and get this off, and we're gonna let it rest inside while we crank up the heat on our Pit Boss to get ready to sear it. You can loosely tent the beef tenderloin in foil while you're waiting for the grill grates to heat up, but don't wrap it tightly or it may end up continuing to cook too much. Our goal is to hold it right at this temperature. So we've had the grill grates warming up on the Pit Boss while we've been smoking here at 250 degrees. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna move this cast iron one out of the way. Move these right over the fire pot. And then we're gonna go ahead and open up the flame broiler so we're getting our direct heat from the fire pot down below there. We're gonna put the grill grates directly over the fire pot here. And we'll scrape those off once they get a little hotter to clean them up. And then we're gonna go ahead and turn the heat on the Pit Boss up to high. So come down to our knob here and turn this up all the way as high as it'll go. I'll close our lid and give this a few minutes to get nice and hot. I'm using this little infrared thermometer. This is more important to use than checking what the temperature gauge on the Pit Boss says at this point, because what I care about is what the surface temperature of the grill grates is. So I use an infrared thermometer like this all the time on cast iron when I'm making steaks, just to make sure my surface temperature is nice and hot. So we're up to well over 600 degrees here, so we're definitely going to get a good sear. The nice thing about the grill grates is that we're going to get a sear on the whole thing rather than just over the area where the fire pot is, having a cooler area on the cast iron out in front here. The grill grates kind of conduct heat all through from one end to the other, so we get a nice even sear along the whole edge. So I'm going to use a little bit of Wagyu beef tallow to grease up our grill grates, just make sure nothing sticks and give us just a little extra beefy flavor. We're going to go ahead and get that on and kind of melt it. We're going to get a little flare up here in the beginning. It'll settle down in a minute. And I like to keep these grates nice and close, so if I have a big flare up, I can just move the beef tenderloin off. Make sure you got your cloth liners and your nitrile gloves over them so you can handle the warm beef tenderloin. And we're going to go ahead and put it right on the grill grates here. I'm going to shake it a little bit so it doesn't stick right off the bat. If you got the cloth liners and the nitrile gloves, it's a lot easier than trying to use tongs to move this thing around. Alright, so about a minute or so on each side, constantly rolling around just so nothing burns. We're going to go ahead and check the middle here. We are at 122, 125. That's exactly where we want to be in the middle there. Knowing it's going to come up another 10 degrees or so while it rests. Let's check the edges. Yep, still about the same, about 125. So we're going to go ahead and take this off. Put it right back on our wire rack. We're gonna let this rest for about 30 minutes before we touch it. We're gonna bring it back inside and just tent it loosely with that foil on the counter, and then we'll check back on it in about 30 minutes. After letting the beef tenderloin rest, the internal temperature rose the rest of the way up to between 130 to 135 degrees, which is our perfect medium rare. Okay, let's go ahead and get these ties off the beef tenderloin. And then make sure you got a good meat slicing knife like this one. Kind of cut these into medallions, and you can go as thick or as thin as you want. If you want them more like a steak, you know, you can cut them a little thicker. If you want a little thinner slices, then obviously go thinner. But we're gonna go right down the middle here. Oh yeah, and it just goes through it like butter. See how tender that is. Perfectly cooked, medium rare. That's exactly what we want. That's why using a good thermometer is just so crucial. Let's go ahead and cut a little medallion off. Let's go ahead and give it a try. And take one of these center pieces here. Cut off a little bit. So good, so tender. Try a little bit of the horseradish cream here. So good, so simple. Smoke, salt, pepper, garlic. The beef tenderloin, the texture, the flavor, it all speaks for itself. You don't need to overdo it on seasoning. This is so good. I'm really gonna enjoy this. We hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons if you want to get more content like this from our channel. I'll put a link to the full step-by-step recipe at madbackyard.com, as well as links to all the products we used today down in the description below. Thanks for watching.